there are objects buried under ancient cities that should not be there. In Turkey, a Bronze Age ship sank 3,300 years ago, carrying 10 tons of copper, 40 tin ingots, 175 glass cylinders, and a golden seal belonging to an Egyptian queen. The only seal of that queen ever found anywhere. In Italy, 2 palace ships were pulled from the bottom of a lake in 1932. Inside were functioning ball bearings, caged bronze spheres that allowed platforms to rotate. 900 years before the device was supposed to have been invented. In Greece, a corroded bronze lump sat in an Athens cabinet for 2 years before anyone noticed the gears inside. 37 interlocking gears. It calculated the orbits of 5 planets, predicted eclipses, and tracked a 4-year game cycle. And the year was approximately 65 before the Common Era. In Egypt, a 142-foot ship was found disassembled into 1,224 components in a sealed pit. It still smelled of cedar. These are 8 ancient ships that should not exist in the historical record. None of them have a complete explanation. In 1954, an Egyptian engineer named Kamal El-Malak was doing routine clearance work on the south side of the Great Pyramid at Giza. On the 26th of May, his crew hit something solid beneath the sand, a row of massive limestone blocks sealed flat against the bedrock. He had them lifted. Below was a pit cut directly into the rock. Rising from it was a smell that stopped him completely. Cedar wood. 4,500-year-old cedar wood, still fragrant. Still releasing its oil into the desert air as though it had been sealed the previous afternoon. Inside, arranged in 13 careful layers, were 1,224 individual wooden components. They were not thrown in. They were sorted, laid in a precise disassembly order, each piece marked with instructions in hieratic script telling the next person exactly where it belonged. Someone had packed this ship the way you pack a flat-pack cabinet, except that no one was supposed to come back for it. Reconstruction took 14 years. The man who did it, Ahmed Youssef Mustafa, had to learn ancient Egyptian boat building from scratch, studying tomb paintings, river models, the marks on the wood itself. When he finished in 1968, he handed engineers a completed vessel 43.4 meters long and 5.9 meters wide. They examined it. Their conclusion, it would float today without a single modification. No keel, no nails, no metal of any kind. The planks were joined using unpegged tenons of Christ's thorn plant and lashed together with ropes woven from halfa grass. And when halfa grass gets wet, it swells. The joint tightens. The hull becomes more watertight under pressure, not less. Modern boat builders arrived at this same principle independently in the 20th century. Someone 4,500 years ago already knew it. The hull shows wear, real wear, marks consistent with actual water use, suggesting the ship navigated the Nile at least once, almost certainly carrying Khufu's body from Memphis to Giza before being dismantled and sealed underground. There are 5 boat pits around the pyramid complex. Only 1 has been fully excavated. 4 remain sealed. We do not know what is in them. In the summer of 1982, a Turkish sponge diver named Mehmed Kakir was working the seabed off the coast of Kaş in southern Turkey when he spotted something on the bottom. He described what he saw as metal biscuits with ears. They were copper ingots, each one cast in the shape of an oxhide, flat with 4 protruding handles, stacked on a rocky slope at a depth of 44 meters. He reported the location and moved on. What came next took 11 consecutive excavation seasons, 1984 to 1994, and 22,413 individual dives to recover. The ship itself was 15 meters long. Built from Lebanese cedar using the same mortise and tenon shell-first technique as the Khufu barque, a method that had apparently been standard across the eastern Mediterranean for over 1,000 years before this vessel sank. No metal fastenings, no nail. The wood was held together by the precision of the joinery. The cargo floor alone tells you this was not an ordinary trading run. 348 oxide copper ingots, 10 tons of raw copper, 40 tin ingots. When copper and tin are combined in a ratio of 10 to 1, you get bronze. And that is exactly the ratio found aboard. Someone was running a mobile bronze foundry across the Mediterranean. Above the metals, the cargo becomes harder to categorize. 175 glass ingots in cobalt blue, turquoise, are in lavender, the oldest intact glass ingots ever recovered anywhere. 149 Canaanite amphorae filled with terebinth resin, elephant ivory and ostrich eggshells from sub-Saharan Africa, amber from the Baltic Sea, a volcanic stone mace head from Bulgaria, carnelian and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. 4 balance scales, suggesting 4 separate merchants were conducting business on the same hull simultaneously. Dendrochronological dating of a fresh-cut firewood branch found on the deck placed the sinking no earlier than 1306 BCE. That date is consistent with the most remarkable single object in the entire cargo. A small gold scarab, no larger than a thumbnail, bearing the cartouche of Queen Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten. It is the only seal of Nefertiti ever recovered anywhere in the world. Off the Royal Egyptian Court, in direct cargo contact with a Canaanite merchant vessel that was also carrying goods from the Baltic and Afghanistan. They also found what may be the world's oldest book, a small hinged writing tablet of boxwood designed to hold wax writing surfaces. The wax did not survive. Whatever was written on it is gone. The Nefertiti scarab is the only seal of that queen ever recovered anywhere in the world. It places the Royal Egyptian Court in direct cargo contact with a Canaanite merchant vessel operating out of Levantine port. Official history says these civilizations had limited contact at this time. Lake Nemi is a volcanic crater lake 15 miles south of Rome. In Roman times, it was considered sacred to the goddess Diana. No ship was permitted to sail on it, by law. Emperor Caligula built 2 ships on it anyway. The first was 70 meters long and 20 meters wide. The second was 73 meters long and 24 meters wide, each one longer than 2 full football pitches placed end to end. Built between 37 and 41 of the Common Era. They sat on a lake no larger than a small town reservoir, attached to the shore by chains, going nowhere. When Caligula was assassinated in 41 CE, his successors stripped them of their valuables, filled the hulls with ballast, and sank them deliberately. The ships sat on the bottom for 1,900 years. In 1928, Mussolini ordered the lake drained. It took 4 years. When the water was gone, engineers descended into the silt and began cataloging what they found. The floors were mosaic. The walls carried marble paneling. There was indoor lead plumbing fitted with copper stopcocks. Functioning taps on a ship built in 37 CE. There was evidence of underfloor hypocaust heating, the Roman equivalent of radiant floor systems, running hot water on a pleasure barge nearly 2,000 years ago. Then they found the platforms. One rotating platform was mounted on caged bronze balls, small spheres held in a circular wooden housing, allowing the platform above to spin with almost no friction. This is a thrust ball bearing. It is the mechanical principle that makes everything from electric motors to bicycle wheels to industrial turbines function in the modern world. The standard historical account holds that ball bearings were first conceptualized by Leonardo da Vinci in the late 15th century and not practically engineered until the 19th. The Nemi ships contain 2 working examples, one using ball bearings, a second using cylindrical roller bearings, built in the 1st century CE, 900 years before Leonardo sketched the idea. They also recovered a complex rotary bilge pump, previously assumed to be a post-medieval invention. The hull exterior was sheathed in lead, applied over tarred felt with copper nails, the earliest large-scale anti-fouling system ever documented. Thus, a museum was built on the shore of the lake specifically to house the ships. They were displayed there from 1936. In 1944, as Allied forces advanced through Italy, German artillery occupied the building. On the night of May 31st, the museum caught fire. Both ships burned to ash before morning. A post-war forensic investigation found no trace of accelerant. The cause was listed as undetermined. What survived? The bronze ball bearings, a few anchor fragments, some fittings now held in Rome's Palazzo Massimo, black and white photographs taken before the war. Everything else is gone. The ships survived 1900 years on the bottom of a lake. They did not survive the 20th century. Between 1405 and 1433, the Chinese Admiral Zheng He completed 7 voyages across the Indian Ocean. His fleet numbered over 200 ships. His crew numbered 27,800 men. He reached the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the east coast of Africa. He returned to China carrying live giraffes, which the imperial court had never seen and mistook for mythical creatures. 87 years later, Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic with 3 ships and 90 men. The treasure ships at the center of Zheng He's fleet were described in Ming Dynasty records as 44 zhang in length. Depending on which measurement standard applies, that places them between 70 and 137 meters long. The debate among historians has never been fully resolved, and what is not debated is the physical evidence. In 1957, excavation at Nanjing's Longjiang shipyard uncovered a single teak rudder post measuring 11.07 meters, longer than half the entire length of Columbus's Santa Maria. Naval engineers calculated that a rudder post of that size belonged to a vessel somewhere between 70 and 150 meters in length. The post is in a museum in Nanjing. You can look at it. The Yongle Emperor, who commissioned Zheng He's voyages, died in 1424. His successor, the Hongxi Emperor, halted all ocean expeditions within months of taking power. The Xuande Emperor permitted one final voyage in 1431. Zheng He died during or shortly after his return in 1433. What followed was systematic. Confucian officials burned the shipyard blueprints. They destroyed the voyage logs. They classified what remained. The Longjiang shipyard was abandoned and eventually buried under city construction. Within a single generation, the institutional knowledge required to build ocean-going vessels of that scale was gone. By 1440, China had no deep-water fleet. Within 50 years, China could not have replicated what Zheng He commanded, even if it had wanted to. No comparable event exists in maritime history. No other great naval power has deliberately and completely erased its own capability in peacetime, on purpose, by administrative order. The fleet was not lost. It was deleted. The Zheng He fleet was erased by people whose names we know, in a year we can date. In the summer of 2007, Professor Mark Hawley of Northwestern Michigan College was running a routine sonar survey of Grand Traverse Bay. The purpose was to locate and catalog 19th century shipwrecks. The sonar returned something else. On the lakebed, at a depth of 12 meters, his equipment mapped 2 concentric granite rings. The outer ring measured approximately 40 feet across, the inner ring approximately 20. Connected to them was a serpentine line of stones running for more than 1 mile across the floor of the lake. The formation had been sitting there, completely undisturbed, in one of the most heavily trafficked freshwater bodies in North America. Within the inner ring, resting on the lakebed, was a table-sized boulder. On its surface was a carved relief approximately 1 meter high. Mark Hawley identified it as a mastodon. Mastodons went extinct in North America more than 10,000 years ago. If the carving is what Hawley believes it is, the formation beneath Lake Michigan predates the Egyptian pyramids by at least 5,000 years. It predates the Khufu barque, the Uluburun wreck, and the Nemi ships by an order of magnitude. The geological explanation is straightforward. As Ice Age glaciers melted at the end of the Pleistocene epoch, meltwater flooded the Great Lakes basin. Whatever was on dry ground became lakebed. The stones were almost certainly arranged on a shoreline between 7,000 and 10,000 years ago, before the water rose. A team using multi-beam sonar, sub-bottom profiling, and 4K photogrammetry mounted on remotely operated vehicles conducted a new survey in April and May of 2025. The results confirmed the formation and sharpened the image of the carving. The exact coordinates of the site have never been made public. The Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa tribes requested the location be withheld to protect what they consider an ancestral site. Independent diving requires a permit. That permit has not been granted to any private researcher. You cannot go there. You cannot verify it yourself. You can only look at the sonar images and decide what you think the carving shows. The Atacama Desert in northern Chile receives between 0 and 15 millimeters of rain per year in its driest regions. One monitoring station recorded 0.5 millimeters annually between 1964 and 2001. At that rate, it would take 120 years to fill a coffee mug. NASA uses the Atacama as its primary test site for Mars exploration vehicles because the surface conditions are the closest match to the Martian environment available on Earth. In 1997, during excavation work in the Atacama, workers reported finding a wooden ship buried 10 feet below the surface, 40 miles from the nearest coastline. The hull was wood, the fittings were iron. The ballast stones and rope were consistent with a 16th century Spanish vessel. No living person, no flood record, and no geological survey has produced an explanation for how it got there. The largest tsunami-driven inland displacement of a ship ever documented in Chilean coastal history is 3 kilometers. In 1868, a catastrophic earthquake and tsunami dragged the USS Wateree roughly 3 kilometers inland at Arica. 3 kilometers. The Atacama ship is 40 miles from the coast. That is 64 kilometers. There is no recorded seismic or hydrological event in the geological history of northern Chile that approaches the force required to move a full wooden vessel 64 kilometers inland and bury it 10 feet underground in the driest desert on the planet. The ship has not been formally excavated by any academic institution. No peer-reviewed study of the site exists. The discovery lives in exploratory field reports. The vessel remains in the ground. No salvage operation has been announced. No museum holds its contents. No university has claimed the dig. It sits there. If it is there, that qualifier matters. In June of 1947, radio operators aboard at least 2 American vessels and multiple Dutch and British listening posts in the Strait of Malacca received a Morse code transmission from a Dutch freighter called the Ourang Medan. The message, later transcribed in the May 1952 issue of the United States Coast Guard's Proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council, read as follows: all officers, including captain, dead in chart room and on bridge. Probably whole crew dead. Then a few seconds of confused dots and dashes. Then 2 words: I die. Then silence. The American vessel Silver Star changed course to respond. When her crew located the Ourang Medan and boarded it, they found the deck covered in bodies. Every member of the crew was dead. The bodies were on their backs, arms outstretched, mouths open, eyes wide, staring upward at the sky. Faces locked in expressions described by the boarding party as frozen terror. There were no wounds, no blood, no signs of struggle on any body. The ship's dog was also dead. The radio operator was found at his station, headset still on, his hand resting on the Morse key. Before the Silver Star could attach a tow line, smoke began rising from cargo hold number 4. The boarding party evacuated. The Ourang Medan exploded and sank. The most plausible surviving theory involves improperly stored potassium cyanide and nitroglycerin, chemicals that, if leaking in a sealed hold, would produce a nearly odorless gas capable of killing an entire crew with no visible wounds, while the unstable nitroglycerin would account for the explosion once the fire reached it. It is a coherent explanation, and it requires the ship to have been carrying illegal or unregistered cargo, which would explain the absence of a manifest. The Ourang Medan does not appear in Lloyd's Register of Shipping. No construction record exists in any Dutch, Indonesian, or British archive. No confirmed photograph of the vessel has ever surfaced. The Silver Star's own logbook contains no entry for the rescue operation. No member of the Silver Star's crew ever gave a confirmed public interview about what they saw. The story was published 3 times in the Dutch-Indonesian newspaper De Locomotief in 1948, and once in an official United States Coast Guard journal in 1952. Something was reported. Something was seen. Something burned and sank. The Ourang Medan may be a fabrication built on a real event, or a real event that was deliberately stripped of its records. Either way, it is the last ship in the pattern. Notice what every ship in this video has in common, not what it contained. What was done with it afterward. The Khufu barque was sealed under 40 limestone blocks and left for 4,500 years. The Nemi ships were sunk by the emperor who built them, raised after 1,900 years, displayed for 8, then burned overnight. The Zheng He fleet was deleted by administrative order. The Antikythera Mechanism sat in a cabinet for 2 years before anyone looked inside, and the tradition it belonged to vanished completely. The Lake Michigan site has been confirmed twice by sonar and remains undivable by policy. The Atacama ship has no investigation. The Ourang Medan has no registry. The Uluburan, the one case where we have everything, the cargo, the artifacts, the scarab, was found by accident, by a sponge diver sheltering from a storm. None of these ships were supposed to be found. The pattern is not what they built. The pattern is what was done with them afterward. The ships we know about are not the problem. The ships we were not supposed to find are. Subscribe, like, and turn on notifications for videos like this.